We're going to open with some femur circles. As you come to lay down, feel free to grab something to put behind your head if that feels a little bit more comfortable. Otherwise, find yourself on your back. Your legs are bent to begin with, but really that's just to help you register the positions of your torso on the floor. So take a moment to notice how you're connecting to the ground. And then the ball is heading underneath the pelvis. It's going to be supporting the pelvis itself. We aren't required to sort of check the position with our forward and back tilts this week, but what we're going to do whilst we're here is lift one knee in towards the chest and take hold of it with the hand, and then lift the other knee in towards the chest as well. So remember, when we're using the ball and when we're using any prop that's creating some instability, it isn't an aim to be still. So it's more that we're welcoming the movement whilst we come into these positions. Our body will naturally look to center us without us holding tight, without us bracing or clenching anywhere. The hands can close the chain of arms and legs just by resting on the knees there. And you could also have your knees and feet a little closer together. Just in these circumstances, it stands to reason that the narrower you can appear, the less movement there might be, particularly if there's a lot of movement as you set up in this position. And just notice, whilst you've been here, what has naturally happened through the back of the body. So this cushion here behind the head is a small one for me. You might feel that if you've got something quite large behind your head, you might need to take it away just to help the head drop back. Notice how the back ribs have dropped to the floor, and maybe even the front of the body is responding by following those. So you're in a tucked shape, a curved shape of the spine, especially from the shoulder blades down towards the tail. And in time, you might find that there is more give through the spine that brings you further into that tucked shape. The legs themselves, they don't need to be in so tight if that doesn't feel so comfortable. They could be a little bit further away. Just notice how that might change your points of contact with the floor. And we're just going to start here using the arms as if they are guiding the lever of the legs forwards and backwards. Remember that the legs can be together. I wouldn't suggest squeezing them tightly, but just knowing that each leg has the other to offer some awareness to might just help with the movement. And that's more if you're experiencing a lot of movement. This levering action is going to turn into your circling action, whereby you are really in charge of how large you go with the circle. One of the challenges here will be symmetry, pace in terms of right and left. So just notice whether maybe one of your legs is moving with a little bit more ease. Maybe it's got some more freedom to it as well. And it might be shifting your weight to that side as it's creating its circular shape. We'll change direction. I've got a nice little rock happening between the sides in this reverse direction. See how that feels for you as well. If it really does feel like it is relentless for you and there's so much movement and not really any sign of settling, you could always take some air out of the ball. And of course, you could also do this same movement without the ball at all. Maybe a cushion underneath the pelvis that had less movement would work a little better for you. We're going to take one more of these. You can pause when the legs are next back in towards each other. And then if you bring your arms down towards the floor, their feet are dropping down separately, and you're going to lift the pelvis and move the ball away. Now, I'd look to keep what you had initially underneath the back of the head just for a moment. So this was your constant for head position, and just notice how that feels there as you've come back onto the mat. Notice your points of contact, particularly through the torso. We're going to look to move the pelvis in its forward and backwards tilting action now. You might find that there is more of a sense of give as you tilt in one direction than the other. And you're not looking to force the movement, but you are aware of the pelvis and its ability to move in both of these ranges. So just notice why you're stopping without that force. And the lower back has had that experience of being opened up already with you having the pelvis on the ball. And so you might find there's a little bit more give in one direction as you're moving here. If you pause and really look to settle the pelvis where it feels like it might be in the middle, we're looking at the side to side pelvic tilts now. And if you followed the previous video, you'll know that this movement was taken on top of the ball last week, where we had more of a swing and a swoop based on that idea that we were on the air of the ball, is giving us a little bit more freedom and buoyancy. And you can still create that idea of freedom through the lower spine as you're moving the pelvis side to side. But it's a simpler version in many ways. The hip bones are relating to each other in a seesaw-like action. So as one hip bone drops down, the other hip bone lifts up. And if you wanted to really tune into that, you could place your hands on those front hip bones, the hip bones of the pelvis, the furthermost forward bones, and just notice how they drop downwards into the floor in that direction and then lift upwards towards the ceiling. Settle the pelvis once more, so find that center position, feel free to move around. Feel free to come back to some forward and backwards tilt, really depending on your experience of that movement. And then arms will come beside you. We're looking to understand this concept. Is it possible for you to keep the pelvis still and move your leg bones? And your leg bones here are moving out to the side. And then they're heading back in towards their starting position. So the thigh bone is falling outwards, but there is some control there. If you let it drop, you may very well find that the opposite hip bone starts to lift up towards the ceiling, and in fact you've rolled to the side with the pelvis as well. Can you Keep the pelvis still as the leg bone moves. There are a few strategies we can add in that will help with that. One of which is sensing the foot that remains in the same place. So the opposite foot to the leg that's falling outwards, just connect it downwards. Again, in last week's video, we did this with the foot on the ball, pushing down whilst we were heading into our dead bug variations. Here and now, without disrupting the pelvis position, how does it feel to look to keep some weight behind by gently connecting one of the soles of the feet down into the floor whilst the other leg is moving? And this, as you know, is to help prevent some tilting of the pelvis side to side, some rocking of the pelvis side to side. You might even notice, just with the arms relaxed beside you, without any intention to do so, that one of your arms feels like it's also helping with a little bit of support. That will naturally be the opposite arm to foot. So check in with that. Be quite strict with yourself. Understand how the leg is heavy and becomes heavier the further it moves away from your torso, away from the pelvis. So the challenge is going to be increased the more the leg moves away from you. So if you feel that the pelvis is moving a lot here as you're doing that movement, then you don't take the leg out quite as far. We can add on by lifting the arms and taking them up towards the ceiling. Again, you may have noticed that one of your arms was useful for you beside you. Still, you can be using the foot, and then the foot's pushing down into the floor really subtly. It's not going to change, but it's going to preempt perhaps movement-wise. We'll take one more of these. And then when the knee is back up to the ceiling, you're going to relax the arms down beside you. Grab your ball. The ball is going to come between the legs. If you have been on a head cushion or had the head raised there, you can take that away. Without a head cushion, if you find that you're very open through the throat, maybe the chin is lifted and you're looking more up towards the back diagonal of the room, bring something underneath the head that is just a little smaller and keep the pelvis lower in your bridging movement. Otherwise, if your head is down on the floor and you're back in your narrow parallel, you're going to stand down into the feet and hover the pelvis, tilting the pelvis towards the ribs as the hips are climbing. You'll take a breath in, up at the top of the movement. And as you breathe out and sigh, the body deflates and descends to start back down at the floor, exhaling down to come up. Inhaling when you're up here, and then exhaling to soften and fall, spreading the sit bones. There's a moment as you come down from the bridge that you might be able to liken to a sensation of resting the pelvis on the ball, and it's the weight dropping downwards into the ball as you exhale and start to return, and that comes from the pelvis. And it means that the pelvis starts to fall backwards, creating a little bit more space here in the front of your clothing, so that when it lands, it isn't landing and it's still way, way tilted towards the ribs. It's landing, it's feeling quite flat and balanced in its appearance. Slightly different bridging movement, standing, tilting and peeling. You breathe out, soften. And you're looking at articulating through the middle spine and then letting the pelvis start to fall and land. Take the arms to the ceiling here, standing down into the feet, hovering, tilting and peeling. It's just an option. Breath in up at the top of the movement. And as you breathe out and sigh, notice the ribs, feel the boniness of them spreading, and then pelvis is falling backwards to land. Last one. And relax your arms. Heading onto our side now for book openings. And at the moment we're exploring two variations of book openings. The first one being with the focus through the middle spine once more, so where your rib cage lays. And then the second one, adding in there, just developing the movement and thinking more about the lower spine being involved. So if the lower spine is involved in the second variation, we're going to look to really remove it from the initial variation. The soles of the feet are in line with the back of your body. Back of your head is in line with the back of the body as well, soles of the feet. So you've created this idea that if the floor were behind you, no head cushions, your head and your lower ribs and your pelvis and your feet would be in one line. Take a breath in here. And as you breathe out, open the arm to the ceiling. Heavy through the legs, wide through the chest. Notice the knees staying in contact with each other. Take a breath in. And as you breathe out, you're bringing yourself back to your starting position. Take a breath in. Breathing out to open. Collarbone is wide. Breath in. And as you breathe out, heading back. If we now add in the lower spine, so the movement will take us round to where we previously were, and then we'll allow the waist to drop back, allow the pelvis to drop back, and allow the top leg to slide up the bottom leg. You'll breathe out once more, and you'll send the pelvis forward to bring you back onto your side. Breath out to open. Collarbone wide. Heaviness through the top arm. Waist, hip bone, and knee. Hip bone and knee will return at the same time. You can drive from the knee or drive from the hip bone. Personally, I feel like I have a little bit more control if I drive from the hip bone, with it being a little bit more central. And also using the breath out to help with that return, particularly as it may very well feel larger for you. Bring yourself round onto the other side. We'll do the same amount. If at any time you feel like you'd like to do a little more of the initial movement, then you can do so. But otherwise, we'll take two where we are focusing on the middle part of the spine. Breathing out, opening, heavy head, collarbone. Allow the top of the chest there to open and fall back. As you breathe out, begin to unravel. Use your breath out to bring yourself back to your closed position. Breath out. Chest. Really considering the shoulder. And bringing yourself back. The next variation will pick up a little bit more of the segments of the spine. So here you are with mid-spine movement, and then if the waist falls back and the pelvis on that top side drops back and the leg still in contact but sliding up the knee. I came further due to the fact that I used more segments of my spine in the rotation. There is quite a difference for me personally with the spinal mobility. Middle spine is somewhat more restricted than lower. And if you felt that you were similar, there will always be a feeling of getting further. But if you felt you were similar and you'd like to take more of that initial variation, then of course you could do one more. Once you're back in your closed position, we're going to head into chest lift as a preparation for Criss-Cross. And then we're going to come into some rolling down and rolling up movements. So finding yourself back on your back once more, interlacing the fingers and taking them behind the head. As you know, your thumbs are pointing downwards and your elbows are narrow. Just check in with the alignment of the ribs and the pelvis, and do address that if following your first curl up you notice that it doesn't feel or doesn't look quite straight. If you send the lower back ribs back as you breathe out, the face will come forwards, and then as you're breathing in and the head is falling back into the hands, you're unraveling to lay yourself back down again. Breath out. And then breath in. So you have that mid-spine movement with that sort of sagittal plane of moving up and down, forward and back. If you start to change that direction and add in a little bit of rotation too, you could turn and gaze to the outside of the thigh, bring yourself back to the center, and then drop the head into the hands. So you have the same approach, essentially back ribs pushing back, and then change the gaze and notice how the shoulders go with you back to the center, and then head dropping into your hands. Exhaling. And then inhaling to center yourself and head falling into hands. This is your last one. Breath out. adding in the rotation, bringing yourself back to center, and then laying yourself back down again. We're going to take a transition into some rolling up. If you'd prefer to come onto your side now and roll yourself up to seated, to start in a seated position, you could. Elbows widen to bring yourself up a little higher, and then you'll draw the feet towards you and unravel them to lift them into your assisted roll-up position. So ordinarily the roll-up would start from your back. We have often started it from seated, just in terms of organization and prepping cushions and props to help out. As you breathe out here, the backs of the legs will go forward. The ribs will push back. And as you're breathing out there, the feet are heading down. And that's going to bring you all the way up into seated. Feel free to grab your cushions now if you've come up there. Maybe that felt a little bit sticky. And then as you breathe out, tilting the pelvis, the feet are pushing away. Then drawing towards you as you bring yourself onto your back. Exhaling, legs go forward. Feet drop down, pelvis rolling out and forward. I'm going to add the ball in here. Last one. And bringing yourself all the way up. We're going to head into the full crisscross now. So from your seated position, if you've had a ball and played around with that on the roll-up, take that away. As you're sending your feet down and away, we're going to come to a place whereby your upper body hasn't laid all the way down, and you're going to use your arms a little like you might do at the beginning of the assisted roll-up. So for the crisscross, the hands are going to come behind your head and elbows are going to be narrow. You're going to bring one knee into your chest, and just as we've prepped, you're rotating towards that bent knee. You're going to take a breath in and switch twice, and you're looking to stay up in your curled up position each time. With this variation, as you're switching next, you're breathing out twice. Remember that it's a forward action. If you had your hands on your knees, you could liken this to your single leg stretch as well. So the kneecap feels like it's pushing up into your imaginary palm. And as you breathe out next, you're going to bring your knees into your chest, hold on to them, lay yourself down, and bring the feet separately down onto your mat. We're going to head into Mermaid now. We're looking at taking the same variation we did in the previous video, which would have you on blocks as an option, coming into your thread the needle. We'll open here with the left leg in front and the right leg behind there. If you're mirroring, I am going to go for blocks today. Just seeing how that feels. Coming on and settling. So the blocks can be useful. It doesn't have to be a specific block. It could be some books piled up or some cushions piled up. It gives the thigh bones some room, particularly the thigh bone that appears to be to the side and behind you. And a little like it might do in a spine stretch or a spine twist, It then gives your spine a little bit more room to play with. So we'll take a breath in here, and as we do so, you're going to lift your right arm. Keep reaching upwards there. It is an arm arc, having come from the side of the body. Take a breath in. As you breathe out, send the floor away. Imagine the front ribs being swallowed. Feel the lengthening through the back of the left hip, across the body diagonally to the back of the right shoulder. You could be turning the gaze back, or you could build up to that. The torso rotates on the arm to find you back in your side bend, and then you're reaching on up there to bring you back to your starting position. So you're lifting, taking a breath in, breathing out, softening through the front ribs. As you breathe out here, you're pushing the floor away. Notice how then of the left arm, the left front ribs are drawing in as the right arm drops. And then there's an opportunity to turn the gaze, depending on really where you're picking up that feeling of length and openness through the back of you. If the neck area feels like it's already at its max, then keep the head down. Gaze still looking towards the floor instead. We'll take our last one. And bringing you up. Of course, if you did choose to use blocks today, the floor does feel like it's that little bit further away as you're heading down to support. So you can gauge that initially and then see how you feel in terms of the size of the movement that you're creating each time. So as you're settling into the opposite side, be aware on the block that the weight isn't then too far forwards through the pelvis, and that you're still sensing you're in the middle of yourself. You can also bring your awareness to your rib cage as well and notice whether that feels like it's moving forwards. So we lift the left arm, breathing in as we do so, and then breathing out. Just being aware of the floor being that little bit further away. Breathing out and lowering. Taking a breath in. Initial movement is quite slow from me today. I want the body to continue to give for me, particularly down the front and the back, just above the hip there. And so if I move suddenly, I'm sort of chancing that it may inadvertently tighten. It's just looking to tune in, understand what your body might need just in that moment. That's better. And then as you breathe out, pushing and sending away there. Feeling like maybe possible to take the gaze back. And I'm going to take one more on this side. To bring you up. Your blocks can come away if you were using those. We're going to head into side kick and we're going to use the ball, and that would have you coming onto your side. The ball is low down in the body. It does want to feel like a little bit of a doorstop underneath the side of you. Watch that it doesn't come underneath the outer part of the hip and leg. That would make it particularly challenging from a balance point of view. And then you're reaching both of your heels, underside of your feet, away from you to lift your top leg. Inhale to swing the leg forward, always just decelerating as you're swooping back. Inhaling to go forward. And then you have that opportunity to slow down and sense and feel based on the fact that the ball is here. You're really looking for the pelvis to counter-rotate as opposed to go with the leg. So here as the leg comes forward, there's a little bit of external rotation, if anything. That's to prevent the leg from dropping. It's also to prevent the leg from turning in. And then you might feel that you're blocked through the front of the hip as opposed to the hamstring stopping you with the range. As you swing the leg back, there's a little bit of rotating inwards there, which helps with the hip bone staying forwards. Both of those rhythms are subtle. You might feel you need to go a little bit more obvious with them to begin with. Let's see how you get on. After you swoop back next there, you can rest the leg down, and we'll head over and do the same thing on the other side. Finding your position. Not only how does it feel with the underside of me touching the floor, but then how able am I to stack on top of that? You want to have both aspects. Swinging and extending. You have your little bit of external, a little bit of internal. So rotating outwards, rotating inwards just a little. Last one. And then resting down from there. We're going to head into our double leg kick. We'll separate and then we'll put the two together. Head is dropping on the hands here. As you know, there is a room for your pelvis with the feet apart. So take them apart so that you can get a sense of pelvis pushing down into the floor. And then when it does, there's that idea of, are you able then to lengthen and relax down, pelvis down, back of the legs up. So having started with the double leg extension, we head into double leg kick, pelvis down, legs reaching long and away. I am going to flex through the ankles, pushing away, going back through the toes and resting the legs down. Pelvis pushes down, legs reach long, flexed ankles coming in, reach away and rest back down again. Last one. The hands come into the lower back. One hand holds onto two fingers of the other. And the head is going to turn and rest down on the floor, so your gaze is looking to one direction. You're going to reach the legs long, sending the pelvis down into the floor and come in. As the legs extend, your elbows start to extend. You square yourself off, looking down towards the floor, widening through the chest and sliding the arms down the back of the body. Turn your gaze to the opposite direction, lower the body and come in. Elbows are relaxed. As the legs begin to extend, widen through the chest, send the sternum downwards and forwards, reaching the legs long, elbows start to straighten. Turn your gaze and bring yourself back to your starting position. Elbows relaxed. You're coming in. Slide and lengthen. Send the sternum forwards. Widen through the collarbones. Find your squareness. Turn your gaze. Lowering down. You're coming in. Lengthen. Reach. Widen. In. Lengthen. Reach. Widen. Last one. In. Lengthen. And as you come down to finish there, you can relax your legs, relax your arms, and bring yourself up into a child's pose. Begin to unravel. And when you're up, you're going to bring yourself up to stand, however you feel comfortable to do so. You could take a step up, or you could take a reverse roll up. And so we're up and standing, and we've headed towards the back of the mat. And we're in our parallel position of the legs. Take a breath in. As you breathe out and lower the gaze, the lower back ribs are pushing back, diving up and over the front of the body. And the knees are softening as you're coming down with that little bit of weight transference towards the balls of the feet. Take a breath in, and as you breathe out, lifting up through the back of the body, using the floor to create that lift upwards. And then as you're breathing out next, lowering the gaze, head heavy. Easy through the jaw. Feel free to pause at any time You could take a breath in. And if you wanted to continue on your journey downwards, it really just depends on how it feels for you. We are going to walk out into a plank position. So that might be you walking out with slightly bent legs and then straightening them as you arrive. You'll then send the heels backwards and downwards as you walk back to your feet. Upon landing, there is an adjustment to head back to bent knees. And as you breathe out there, you'll be sending the floor away, lifting up through the back of the body, unraveling, and bringing yourself all the way back up again. Exhale. Lower. Ribs back. There's a turning of the ribs. There's a letting go in the back of the neck. Jaw. Back ribs spreading. And then sending the heels backwards and away and down, softening as you arrive back, changing your gaze, and when you're ready to, lifting up through the lower back. To restack. We're done. Well done, everyone. Take care.